Hello everybody and welcome back to the greatest live show of all time. That is right everybody. Now, for those of you who are new here that are watching the VOD, I always make sure to include timestamps in the description below. So if you're interested in skipping around for whatever wacky reason, you are more than welcome to do so. You can also do the thing where you basically just watch the entire thing, maybe like a podcast or whatever. But yeah, without further ado, I think we may as well just get right into the meat of the topic, because why the hell not, right? I mean, no reason to keep you all waiting on the edges of your seat, right? But maybe there should be a little bit more further ado, you know? You never know. It really do be like that, huh? But yeah, anyways, where was I going with this? Oh, right, yeah, no, I'm just setting everything up, because why the hell not? And, yeah. Hello, Dithical Studios. Hello, Cheetah Man. Hello, Batal Crafter. Hello, Scorpio HQ. PollyPeople calls everyone that. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So, long story short, unfortunately, PollyPeople did not debate me. However, I was in her live stream chat, and oh boy, let's just say she had some not so very nice things to say about me. And yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So this all started with me basically calling her out because of the debate she did with Keffals over a year ago over whether or not Finster is transphobic. Yes, that was an actual debate that existed. And long story short, the logical conclusion of all of her arguments boiled down to femboys are bad, but she won't outright say that. Instead, she needs to weasel her way out of it and claim that, oh no, I'm actually cool with femboys and gender nonconformity, even though the logical conclusions of all my arguments say the complete contrary. But yeah, anyways, I guess we're not going to get too much into that, because I think that there is a much more interesting discourse that's maybe a little bit newer, at least in terms of me versus her. You know, I've already done a live stream talking about her horrible take on Finster, so we don't need to rehash that. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. So, yeah. Basically, it's me arguing with her, but I'm in chat. And let's see how good she is at creating good faith arguments.
You should get on the PollyPeople train, really, but you know you're not going to, because you want to be you're extra committed to white supremacy.
Right off the bat, with literally no evidence, just accusing me of being a white supremacist, straight up.
Do white people experience racism? Yeah. Hey, we are going a little.
Do they experience racism? Well, generally no. But the question that she's about to ask isn't that. It's a different question. Because generally, I would agree, white people tend not to experience racism.
Pardon the proud daughter of Skyrim, yeah. Proud daughter of Skyrim in the chat. True daughter of Skyrim. White before trans, that's how it is. Look, if you're a Vaush enjoyer, Keffals enjoyer, if you're a white trans person, you are always white before trans. That's the argument right there. And, well, okay.
What does it mean to be white before trans? Why would somebody's whiteness supersede their trans? Like, this doesn't make any fucking sense.
It's the assertion of truth. If you wanted to debate me on something, you could have chosen that. Instead, you made up an argument.
All right, I'm willing to debate you on that.
Okay, so you want to have a good faith debate with me? I'm willing to do so, but go on. Keep saying I'm a white supremacist with no...
Okay.
You know she's making a really good argument when, and being very good faith when she uses that voice. Incredible.
It's how hard it goes. Okay. All right, hey, Femyoz, I'm sorry. I didn't mean...
Femyoz, that's how you pronounce my name. Incredible. The best pronunciation of Femyoz.
You forgive me? Wait, will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? I didn't mean to accuse you of something. Let me just ask you a question. The evidence is...
Yeah. I ended up forgiving her, but then she continued to be bad faith.
You're a Vaush. Yeah. Let me ask you a question though. Look, you can clear this up. With just a simple answer. Is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as anti-white racism? Is that
Anti-white racism technically can exist. It's just not very common.
Something that ever happens? Does it exist?
Not very often, but it can, technically speaking. And right here in chat, you can see me being kind and saying, sure, I'll forgive you.
Sure, I'll forgive you. Sexy lady daytime music. Calling yourself a Vaush. Vaush is already evidence of harboring white supremacy. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Being a fan of Vaush is such amazing evidence of somebody being a white supremacist. Incredible.
True. It's true. If you call yourself a Vaush, my guess is you're a white supremacist, to be fair.
Yeah, that's totally not fucking unhinged.
But, you know what? Not all Vaushites are, well, we'll just assume for the, imagine saying I'm more of a Vaushite.
Time for a good faith debate. Yeah, I don't agree with everything Vaush says, bro.
So here's what I say in chat. Anti-white racism is possible, but not a real-world issue or something that exists systemically like anti-black racism. So right off the bat, I think I make a fairly decent point, where I, right off the bat, categorically distinguish between interpersonal versus systemic racism. Interpersonal racism can be applied to anybody, right? For instance, if there are... let's say there's an all-black school, but then there's one white kid that goes there, right? And the white kid gets treated like shit on the basis of their skin color. Well, that would be racist, right? Now, is this something that happens very often? Fuck no. But to claim that there is fundamentally no such thing as there being anti-white racism as something that could possibly happen is a bit of a stretch, right? It could be the case that it doesn't happen very often, which it doesn't. You could say it's not a real-world issue or something that needs to be taken seriously because of how infrequently it happens, and I would absolutely agree with that. But to claim that as a fundamental concept, it is implausible for it to happen at all in any niche scenario is objectively wrong. So let's see what PollyPeople has to say.
To be fair, I don't really like him that much.
Anti-white racism is possible. Let's go. Okay, so you're a white supremacist.
So apparently what I just said is white supremacy somehow.
The date's over. The answer is white supremacist.
A define white supremacist. Like this, I don't know how this would be a white supremacist take. Like, white supremacy implies that there is something supreme about the white race, which is not what I said. At no point did I say anything even remotely similar to that. All I said is that, yeah, racism against anybody is possible. It happens a lot more against minorities, and white racism isn't like a real world issue, but it's technically possible. I don't know how that's a white supremacist take.
Anti-white racism is
Serious moment right now, so probably just looking at YouTube chat. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking too much at chat in general. I'm sorry.
not possible. You want to know why? But not a real world issue. Anti-white racism would only be possible if there was such a thing as a white race that ever needed to be defended and not destroyed.
Wait, did I ever say that the white race needed to be defended? Like, that wasn't my position.
There we go.
Read the rest of the message.
Nope, I'm not
No, don't read the rest of the message. That might require you to have some sort of nuanced discussion.
gonna read the rest of the message. Because you said anti-white racism is possible, and that's all I need
Because it is.
to hear. But okay.
It's improbable. It doesn't happen very often. It's not something that needs to be taken very seriously. But yes, it's possible.
Okay. The reason why I don't need the rest of the message, the reason why you don't understand why I don't need the rest of the message is because you're a white supremacist. Or
so instead of just reading the rest of the message like a normal person and actually addressing my argument, she decides to weasel her way around that so she doesn't have to address any of my actual points so that she can just call me a white supremacist.
you're a white identitarian, which is equivalent to being a white supremacist, because in order
What does it mean to be a white identitarian?
to facilitate white supremacy, you have to recognize that white is an identity that is somehow you can be racist against instead of
Well, you can. Again, it's just not very common.
instead of being anti-racist against.
But not a real world issue or something that exists systemically.
I'm saying
Well, anti-racism isn't something that is against white people. It's against racism. That's the point. Anti-racism isn't about destroying the white race. It's about being against racism. To claim that anti-racism is something that is against white people is a fundamental misunderstanding of what anti-racism actually stands for.
Saying it doesn't exist even interpersonally. I'm saying there's no such thing. That's a Vaush take. That's a white
Yes, that is a Vaush take. Based Vaush. W Vaush.
supremacist take.
It's not a white supremacist take.
Rachel says what? Yeah. It's not a real world issue. Then what's the problem with Professor Flowers, right? Yeah, it's not a real world issue.
Well, the problem with Professor Flowers is that she's a black nationalist who advocates for harmful ideas, such as black nationalism.
Interpersonally, but it's not possible. It is not possible. It's only interpersonally possible.
It's physically impossible. So if a black person beats up a white person on the basis of their skin color, that's not racism, apparently. Okay? Again, it's not very common, but it's possible.
If you are a white identitarian. And so there you go. You've just admitted you're a white identitarian. Because
what is a white identitarian? Would you like to explain what that actually means?
You're defending you are saying that somebody could be racist against you based on your white
yes, they could. It just doesn't happen very often.
Identity. And that is white identitarianism.
Based on a white identity? What do you mean by white identity? Like, as in the identification of a category of people? Like, yeah, you can identify that there is a category of people called white people. The same way you can identify the fact that there is a category of people known as black people. Same thing with Asian people. That is a category of people. You can identify that fact, right? And so I don't know what this has to do with white identitarianism. You can identify any race of people as whatever category. That is something you can do. Now, the way you categorize them is going to be arbitrary to an extent, but that doesn't mean that the categories don't exist in terms of how we categorize people, right? All of it is socially constructed, obviously, right? Like I mean, sure, there's like the there's it's multifaceted, right? So on one hand, you have like the physical skin color and attributes associated with different races and whatnot, right? And then you also have the social element, right? The social categories surrounding different races, right? We have socially constructed the sort of lines that distinguish between races, and it gets very convoluted once you introduce, say, for instance, people that are of mixed race into the mix, right? Because ultimately, any social category is not going to be the end-all, be-all sort of description of who somebody actually is or how somebody fits into the equation, right? So ultimately what you end up with is you end up with general ideas of what categories people fall into in terms of their race, and that sort of, I guess, determines the way that society has, in the past, at the very least, categorized people, and still currently does to an extent, right? Now, why does this serve utility to recognize as like a leftist? Well, the reason it serves utility is because it's what allows you to fight against systemic racism. It allows you to actually address the issues at hand, right? So, for instance, systemic racism against black people, for instance. I mean, we still have the effects of redlining, say, for instance, that take place, that systemically and negatively affect black people today, right? Because you have a very disproportionate amount of them in very poor areas that are underfunded, with underfunded education, and it's just this never-ending cycle that disproportionately affects this particular group negatively. Now, ultimately, the best way to address this would be to look at what mechanism was actually used to cause that in the first place, right? So the main mechanism that was used to cause this specific issue was economic policy. And ultimately, most racist policies today have to do with the criminal justice system and economic policy, right? So if we address, say, issues that disproportionately affect poor people who are disproportionately black, that's going to solve a lot of the issue, right? What if there is a group of people that disproportionately benefit from something? Yeah, so if a group of people disproportionately benefits from something, so say white people disproportionately benefit from white supremacy, for instance, right? That would be a problem. You would have to address the fact that, okay, what does that entail? White supremacy is something that negatively affects black people and Asian people, or whoever it may be, rather than benefiting white people. See, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not something where white people in the long run even benefit from white supremacy. I mean, they do relative to other races, but it's more often going to be the case that it's really just harming people that aren't white rather than elevating white people. See, I personally believe that white people in the long term would also benefit from a more equitable society. But I mean, I'm not going to I don't think that PollyPeople would even disagree with that specific take, that in the long run, everybody, including white people, benefits from would benefit from a more equitable society. At least I would hope.
It's not possible because it's somebody who thinks that somebody can attack them on the basis of their whiteness and have it be racist instead of anti-racist. You know,
Hold
I'm
on,
in
wait.
the army.
Let's replay that.
Somebody can attack them on the basis of their whiteness and have it be racist instead of anti-racist.
So attacking a random white person for no reason is not anti-racist. Attacking a random white person on the basis of their skin color and nothing else is also not anti-racist. You're not fighting against racism. You're not preventing racism from happening. All you're doing would, in that case, would be increasing racial tensions. That's not anti-racist. Anti-racism would be fighting against systems that oppress minority groups.
You know, I'm in the army. We have a term for when writing anything called bluff. Bottom line up front, tell us what you mean. I'm not sifting.
Why do people still care about the Cheeto shit? I thought that was ages ago.
through paragraphs of bullshit.
I'm sorry I haven't talked to you in so long, Kelly. I was hospitalized with COVID and edema. Don't worry about it. You are more than welcome to prioritize your own health over watching my streams. Obviously. Like, come on. Don't be apologizing when you didn't do anything wrong. I'm just saying. My eyes were so swollen I couldn't see my phone screen. Hope you've been all right. I have been all right. Anti-racist is a word, right? I believe so. But yeah, I hope you're doing better.
Good faith debate Andrew comes in state and Polly hates femboys, no evidence and is now. This is the problem with being a good faith Vaushite coming in here, is you find out you get owned and destroyed and shown to be a liar and a white supremacist.
Okay, what did I lie about? And again, you haven't demonstrated that I'm a white supremacist, so you're wrong. What does anti-racist mean? It literally just means being against racism, fighting against systems of oppression, fighting against actual racism. It does not mean being against white people. Okay, that is a straight up lie.
I don't even... You're providing your own evidence right here, by the way. What is interpersonal anti-whiteness? Yeah, right. It is me being offended on the basis of somebody being mean about my Aryan nature.
No, it would be... No, interpersonal racism against white people would be the same... now, granted, it would hold less power, but it would be a similar concept to interpersonal racism broadly, right? Just targeting someone on the basis of their skin color, right? Now, do I think that, like, let's say somebody calls me a cracker. Do I think that that is on the same level as calling somebody the N-word? no, because it doesn't hold any real power, right? If somebody calls me a cracker, that doesn't have the same amount of power as somebody calling a black person the N-word as an insult, right? There's clearly not a fair dynamic there, right? And I acknowledge that. But to claim that it is completely impossible to be racist against white people is flat out wrong. What if there's some, what about a I don't know, like what if there's like an Asian country that is anti-white, and you know they're very racist against white people that go there. Like, is that not like, again, it's like, okay, in that case you would have Asian people that are in power, right? So it wouldn't be white people in power. And so in that case, would the interpersonal racism count? Or none of this makes any fucking sense.
Is there such a thing as anti-Aryan? So are black people defined as black identitarians or black supremacists if they believe anti-black racism exists interpersonally?
No. And that's actually a good point. Is that no, they wouldn't. Oh wait, she was reading my message. No wonder why it was such a good point. Yeah, if you believe that racism exists interpersonally, that doesn't make you an identitarian. Or maybe it does, in which case that word means nothing. An Asian country. Yeah, I'm thinking of, yeah, okay, like what if I went to China and then there were Asian people that were racist to me? That was sort of like the idea that I had in my mind, right? I don't know if PollyPeople would acknowledge that would be like, I don't know. I genuinely, because like at that point I would be the minority group there, right? Like again, like this isn't something that is like a real world issue, but like again, I'm not somebody that's like, oh no, anti-white racism is so bad, it's this issue that really needs to be addressed. Like, no, it doesn't really need to be addressed. But to claim that it is physically impossible is wrong.
See, this is what Vaush does to a motherfucker. This is what Vaush brain does. So,
what does Vaush brain do exactly? Make me create better arguments than you? It sounds like a good thing.
Get wrecked, Femyoz. I'm gonna ask
the fact that she thinks she's winning too.
You to answer your own question. Why do you think? This is what Vaush brain does, by the way. They think you can just flip one and the other and it's the same.
Well, this isn't like a Vaush specific thing though. It's just asking a legitimate question. But what is the ultimate reasoning behind why thinking that it is physically possible for interpersonal racism to apply to any race, including white people? Why is that a white identitarian position, but believing that interpersonal racism could apply to black people or Asian people wouldn't be an identitarian position? Is that a guy? No, that's a girl. She is a woman. She is a woman.
In a white supremacist world where black people are forced to exist under white supremacy and have been genocided and relocated in their millions, and thus...
So right now she's describing systemic racism, which exists and is a real issue. Notice how whenever systemic racism is brought up, the number one thing I'll say is that, yes, it's not really something that applies to white people.
Have no concept of their history except for blackness, which, by the way, was given to them by white supremacists, but it's really all they have. You know, like, what are you going to do at that point? That's to the extent that black people don't have a knowledge of their history or where they...
I think it's a guy, lol. No, she's a woman. She identifies as a woman.
Come from, that's a crime. That's one of the, if not the greatest crime of all time. And you're like, oh, I'm going to hold that against them? Get out of here. That's why you're a white supremacist, by the way. you can see why Vaush, Vaushites pull on the Klan hood immediately, right?
She just said a whole lot of nothing.
Because that's what you're doing right now. Man, I sure do love when white people speak on black issues. That never gets old, right? And Femyoz here thinks you can erase white and put black, and it's the same thing, right?
Yes, if you replace the variables, then yeah, that was the point, was to replace the variables to test the consistency of her logic.
Which is what white supremacists say. You realize that if someone wants to genocide white people...
Yeah, white supremacists just love to say that systemic racism is a legitimate issue that disproportionately affects black people in this country, and that we need to have systemic changes that fix this issue. Yeah, that's what every white supremacist will ever tell you.
People, they would still be racist regardless if they have the means of doing so, brother. But you can't genocide white people. Well, you can't genocide white people.
Well, as in, no one has the means to. You would be correct. I agree. Nobody has the means of genociding white people, right? That's not the standard for whether or not interpersonal racism is possible, right? So it could be the case that, say, there is a white supremacist that is very racist against black people, and they want to genocide black people. Well, I mean, they can't do it. They can't single-handedly genocide black people, so I guess it's not a real issue. Again, I would agree that systemic racism against black people is a real issue and against white people is not a real issue, because there isn't systemic racism against white people. But interpersonally, you can be racist against anybody. Depends if they live in South Africa, it could happen. That's also true. Yeah, what if I moved to South Africa? Then what?
It's kind of weird that white people only exist because white supremacy exists.
No. You realize that white people would exist even if that white supremacy didn't exist. Let's say that instead of white supremacy, it was Asian supremacy, right? In an alternate reality. White people would still exist. The reason that there are distinctions between races in the first place is because of power structures that have, yes, disproportionately negatively affected minority groups. But to say that it is inherent to whiteness as like this essentialist claim is wrong. I think that the steel man of our argument here is that if white supremacy didn't exist, there wouldn't be a need to categorize people based on race. I'm guessing that's like what she's trying to say here. In which case, I do think that that's like an interesting position that I don't entirely disagree with, right? Because yeah, what utility does it really serve to make that distinction, right? However, I've sort of already laid out my position of, yeah, that the utility it serves from a leftist perspective is to address certain issues that disproportionately affect certain groups over others, right? That's sort of the point I've made. So I don't know why she disagrees with me.
White people only exist because white people want them to exist. It's like Aryanism, right?
Well, no. Which white people? I'd rather it not exist as a concept. I'd rather race not be something that has caused so much tension. I'd rather society not be racist. That'd be awesome if there was no systemic racism. Hell yeah. If interpersonal racism wasn't something that could even exist in theory, that'd be great. Unfortunately, it does, right? We live in the real world.
Do you think there's such a thing as anti-Aryan, like the way the Germans described it as racism? No!
Again, anti-Aryanism, what would that be? Like, very specific type of German? Like, if there was... Again, this is so fucking, like, niche and specific that I don't know how it would apply, but theoretically, if there was a quote-unquote anti-Aryan that wanted to kill everybody with with blonde hair and blue eyes, then okay, that would probably be bad. That would be a very strange position, and I have yet to meet somebody like that. I don't know if that person exists or not, but theoretically, if they did, yeah, that wouldn't be a good position to hold.
Oh, of course not, because it's a construct designed by and for white people. It's not fundamental, and you know that because it changes over time. The people.
So I do agree that yes, race as a concept is something that was predominantly used and socially constructed by white societies, in broadly speaking, at least in the context of the United States of America, right? Like, yeah, globally, it's going to be a little bit different. There are different ways that countries around the world have categorized people based on race, right? This isn't intrinsic to white people alone, right? People have categorized each other this way everywhere for ages, unfortunately. Again, I do agree that it exists as a result of certain people making power structures. However, that doesn't automatically mean that it's physically impossible to be interpersonally racist against somebody based on their race, regardless of what their race is, which I would assume that most leftists would agree with me on that. The concept of America as the Constitution, I guess that's a concept behind it, right? However, to claim that America was this great place for the land of the free, well, who was free? Well, white men, right? And I'm not somebody that likes to go around being like, white man bad, white man bad, white man bad, right? But for the longest time, yeah, it was just white people, white men specifically, that were free in this country, right? If you're a woman, if you're black, good fucking luck having rights. It wasn't until later that as a result of changes occurring, that more people started to have more rights. The concept of America today, right? Yeah, America's a lot better than it used to be, right? This doesn't mean it's perfect. I mean, what we have now in terms of racism, for instance, are I guess the after effects of systemic racism, like of things, say, for instance, redlining against black people, right? They still disproportionately suffer consequences economically as a result of these past policies / things that would occur. And even though redlining isn't something that's still actively being done today, it's something that happened recently enough to the point where it still affects people today. Because what you end up with is with a disproportionately poor population of black people. And so, again, that's something that needs to be addressed. And it's not just black people that have been negatively affected by certain policies either, right? Like, take indigenous people, for instance. They've also been disproportionately negatively affected. I mean, hell, we could go on a whole tangent about how, oh, here's like a long list of every bad thing America has done to marginalized people. I don't think that serves any utility. I think everybody kind of knows that America isn't like a perfect place, and that as a country we've done bad things, but I don't know.
People that get allowed to call themselves white changes so that people that are in the in-group get to maintain their power level and their political power, and thus and they do it at the expense of other non-white people.
Again, this is talking about systemic racism. That this isn't interpersonal.
That's why when you make an equivalence to non-white people, racialized people, if you will, vis-a-vis non-racialized people.
So this argument would hold up if we were talking about systemic racism. Like, if you were arguing against somebody that said that systemic racism applies equally to every race in this country, then yeah, they would be wrong, and this argument would be correct. But if we're talking interpersonally, because it's at such a micro level, and removed from not entire. I mean, sure, you could argue, well, nothing is entirely removed from broader society or in a vacuum, right? Again, I guess that would be a steel man of her argument here. I guess the main point is that racism as a fundamental concept is literally just discriminating against people on the basis of their skin color, right? So interpersonally, because it's at such a micro level, you can do this to anybody, right?
You are a white supremacist, and you're not just a tacit white supremacist, you're an active white supremacist, because whiteness only exists to oppress. It's not fundamental in any way.
So again, I don't like her framing here, but I'm going to try and steelman her argument here because I'm charitable. I think what she's trying to say here is sort of what I touched on earlier, which is that whiteness as a concept, or I guess race as a concept, exists because it was a concept that was used by society to oppress marginalized people, right? Race was constructed socially to do that. In which case, I actually agree with that portion of her argument. What I disagree with is the idea that you can't be interpersonally racist to any category of people. Again, this is a systemic issue. This is a broader issue, right?
In any way. And to the extent that white supremacy has resulted in groups of people not being left with an identity, you want to hold that against them, which is even more hardcore white supremacist.
Wait, what is being held against who? Let's replay that.
Supremacy has resulted in groups of people not being left with an identity. You want to hold that against them, which is...
So I think what she's referring to here is like, for instance, like the idea of assimilation, forcing natives to assimilate to our culture rather than allowing them to have their own identity. In which case, yeah, I agree that was fucked up. America should not have done that. Again, this has nothing to do with interpersonal racism. This has a lot more to do with systemic racism. Like, I don't even think she disagrees with my position on systemic racism. I think she just disagrees with the fact that I categorically distinguish between interpersonal and systemic racism. Like, that's what it seems like. Like, maybe that's her issue. Maybe she just doesn't want those to be separated because she thinks that they're so intertwined, I guess, would be the steelman position here. I just don't see that being the case, simply because I don't see why you can't isolate the variables and say, okay, yeah, interpersonally, this is what racism looks like. Systemically, here's the bigger picture of what racism looks like. And you'll notice if you look at the bigger picture, then yeah, racism is something that doesn't really work against white people, right? But again, if we're not looking at the bigger picture, if we're looking interpersonally, then that's sort of the whole point, is that we're looking at a micro level. So that's all there is to it, is looking at it at a macro versus micro level. And I think that PollyPeople is incapable of realizing that, oh, okay, if you look at it on a micro level, even though these are generally like this is generally the way racism works on a macro level. On a micro level, it can vary more, right? There's more variety to it, right? Technically, on a micro level, yes, it is possible to be racist against white people. Again, it just doesn't happen very often because that's generally not the way racism leans. But again, I just wish that she was more willing to have a more nuanced discussion about this. The PollyPeople is calling you a white supremacist on what grounds? How are you oppressing people, Femyoz? By existing, I guess. I'm oppressing people. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's look, I'm trying to be so charitable. I'm really trying my hardest to steelman her position here.
Is even more hardcore white supremacist. No one will ever be your friend if you don't get out of there, right? Yeah, look. The reality is you're not going to be able to talk a white person out of being racist if they're in the Vaush community. They're way too...
But again, it's like, I don't think she realizes that my position here aside from separating the ideas of interpersonal and systemic racism and literally just believing that interpersonally it is physically possible but very unlikely for white people to be discriminated against. It's physically possible, technically, it just doesn't happen very often, as opposed to it never happens and it is physically impossible for it to happen, right? Literally, the primary difference between our actual positions is just mine is more nuanced. Hers is more dichotomous. That's literally it. That is the main difference here. So I don't know why she feels the need to label me as a white supremacist for trying to have a nuanced discussion and say that, yes, this is technically possible. Here's why it's not a real world issue. But she can't do that. It's like what pisses me off more than anything else is I feel like she's capable. Like if she put her mind to it, she would be capable of having a proper lefty analysis of this and a proper nuanced discussion with me. Because we most likely agree on most policy positions. We probably don't disagree all that much politically. I think that the main thing we disagree on is the way that we frame arguments, right? I think that the main reason she doesn't like me or Vaush or Keffals is because aesthetically we're a lot edgier. And also we have more nuanced takes. And we're willing to acknowledge that the world isn't as black and white as she thinks it is. And to her, that's white supremacy. That's being a Nazi. But in reality, it's just trying to have the most nuanced discussion possible, trying to arrive at truth rather than trying to aesthetically look as left-leaning as possible, which isn't what leftism should be about. It's not about your aesthetic. It's not about having this dichotomous worldview where your goal is to call anybody that slightly disagrees with you a white supremacist. This isn't even a political disagreement for the most part. This is a disagreement on how we categorize people, how we label them based on slight disagreements. I've lost all faith in leftism. They are so fucking quick to throw out any nuance in favor of avoiding confrontation of their ideals. Well, Femboy, you have to keep in mind that not all leftists are the same, right? Like, I'm also a leftist. Vaush is a leftist, etc., right? It's almost like we're not a monolith, but PollyPeople wants us to be a monolith. And that's the problem, is we shouldn't be a monolith. We should allow for nuance. We shouldn't just shut down a discussion and label somebody who agrees for the most part but has this one small caveat in their position, label them as a white supremacist, and you'll see eventually she ends up banning me from her chat or timing me out for 10 minutes or whatever, at which point I leave because she's clearly not willing to have an actual discussion with me.
Committed to being racist, but I will note that HasanAbi Daily is correct when they say no one will ever be your friend if you stay in the Vaush community, because the only people that will like you are other repellent Vaushites.
This is deranged. Like, if your argument is your position is unpopular, first of all, this is a terrible fucking argument because the correctness of my argument is not contingent upon whether or not it's a popular enough position for me to be isolated from the other communities or whatever, right? That's not what determines whether or not I'm right. Not to mention the fact that my position would be a lot more popular than PollyPeople's. Like, I think that if you look at the average American, you're looking at a centrist, okay? I'm very far left of the average American. So to claim that oh, yeah, good luck making friends because you're not far left enough is fucking stupid. Now, that being said, I actually don't have an issue based on political affiliation with making friends. I mean, granted, I'm not going to be friends with conservatives who want to kill trans people because I'm trans, But generally, if I vibe with somebody, I'm gonna be friends with them regardless of what they believe politically, because at the end of the day, I don't think that negatively affects anybody. I don't think that decreases utility. Like, even if they vote for politicians that are harmful, if their heart is in the right place, but they have harmful ideas, it's something that I would want to slowly get them away from, right? But again, PollyPeople thinks that would be that's not even feasible. Popularity shouldn't make people's positions / opinions right. Yeah, no, and PollyPeople of all people should know this. She should know that, I mean, hell, she has unpopular opinions that I disagree with. She got fucking dogpiled after the whole Keffals debate. So she should know that, okay, the correctness of my argument isn't actually contingent upon whether or not people agree with me. It's contingent upon the actual logic and reasoning. Now, granted, I disagree with her in the Keffals debate as well, but not because Keffals is more popular than her. It's not because she has an unpopular opinion. It's because she's wrong.
Thus isolating you further into the cult, and it's very embarrassing. Interpersonal anti-Aryanism. Yeah, right. Get out of here. So
every time you find yourself agreeing with the leftists because they're making a liberal argument, just think about it. No, not necessarily. You have to keep in mind that, if leftism and liberalism are not diametrically opposed to one another, right? That doesn't mean that they're the same thing. They're not. They're very different. But no, I disagree. I think that a lot of leftist arguments that Vaush makes in favor of, say, socialism are absolutely fucking spot on, right? Those aren't liberal arguments. Liberals are not in favor of socialism. They're in favor of capitalism. But again, it really boils down to not just having leftist positions, but it's also about the framing. Doesn't Vaush make the distinction between liberalism socially and economically? I think that, yes. He also makes the distinction broadly. Like, in terms of distinguishing between social and economic issues, I feel like he does that broadly. I'd say that socially, I'm more, I don't know what I would be socially. Probably on board with, most SOCDEMs, but the reason I'm not a SOCDEM is because I have more, I believe in economic policies that are further left, and I also believe that social issues and economic issues are intertwined to an extent. I believe that economic issues are simply a lot of times a mechanism through which social change can be enacted. PollyPeople is a single person. That is true. That is true. She is a single person. Should be poly person, not PollyPeople. What the hell? So confusing. Anyways. What's a SOCDEM? They're not a leftist, they're liberals. Yeah, no. Well, and again, it's going to depend on whether or not we're talking about economic versus social policies, right? But that's the thing. Is SOCDEMs and socialists, I mean, how often do they disagree, in terms of social issues? The main disagreement there would be economic policy, right?
So I'm part of the KKK because I believe you can be racist against anyone.
you can't be racist against anyone. That's
But you can interpersonally. It's just not an issue systemically, and it's also not really. It's not usually an issue interpersonally either against racism against white people is so uncommon that it's a non-issue. And I think that if instead of having this weird dichotomous position of it must be physically impossible, and if you disagree at all in the slightest by having a slightly more nuanced position, you're a white supremacist. I think if instead of that, if she had the position of, okay, well, it's such a non-issue that it's basically negligible, then I would agree with her, because it is a like racism against white people is a non-issue. It doesn't really exist as a real issue, right? But to say that it is not possible is the main distinction here. Also, hello, Lord Pasta, welcome to the stream.
That's white supremacist. But also, you're using that against actual racialized people, right?
No, I'm not using it against anybody. I'm just saying that it's physically possible to be racist against anybody. Simply put, it's just not very likely that people are going to be racist against white people. It just doesn't happen very often. It's not a real issue that needs to be addressed. Like, I don't know why she needs to lie about my position. Like, it's weird. It's fucking weird.
You're white. You're white, I have to assume, right?
Yes, because the correctness of my argument is solely contingent upon my skin color, obviously.
Thus, you don't have a race. You're a racial default.
So this is, in a broader context, I actually sort of agree with the idea that whiteness is almost seen as like a racial default, right? A lot of people don't think about it, right? People usually only think about their race if they're in a minority group that's actually negatively affected by it, right? So I agree with that aspect of it. I agree that being white is almost seen as a racial default in Western society. I don't disagree there. But again, this doesn't support her actual proposition. I guess that, again, a steelman of her position here would be that because it's seen as a racial default, and because it's socially constructed and we socially decided that it's a racial default, that you can't be racist against a racial default. I guess that would be the steelman of her position here. Again, I'm trying really hard to be charitable. I think that that's the best argument she could make for this position. But again, this would be only in Western countries. But that's not even her position. Her position isn't just, oh, you can't be racist against white people in Western countries, right? That's like if she had said you can't be racist against white people, parentheses, in Western countries, I'd be more sympathetic to that position. They'll write you off and call you racist just as fast as a conservative will say you're woke or a pedo and write you off. Yeah, that's the problem I have. It's like there's like no actual engagement here with my arguments. It's like I barely disagree with her actual like political positions, but that's enough for her to label me as a white. It's like, okay, yeah, I disagree with one specific proposition she made, and that's enough for her to label me a certain way. It's incredible.
That's by design, right? Or at least you don't have a race.
Why is racism against white people a non-issue? What I mean by that is it's just not something that happens frequently enough for it to be like a real world issue that needs to be addressed or tackled in some way, right? It just doesn't happen. And again, this is a very American-centric sort of debate as well, right? We're looking at it through the lens of American politics for the most part, right? Or I guess Western politics, I suppose, since that would involve predominantly white societies, right? Where white people are like the majority. They're the ones that have had a disproportionate amount of power, right? Especially historically, right? So it's not to say that it's physically impossible, right? Like, to be racist against white people. It's just my position here is that it's just so uncommon that it's not like a real issue worth addressing unless it's like interpersonal. Like if there's somebody that's like, being like really like cruel towards you, maybe somebody beat the shit out of you in school because you're white, because you're a white boy. And you're a nerdy white boy, and it's because of that a person of color beat you up, then that would be something worth addressing on a micro level, right? But that's not a systemic issue, right? That wouldn't be something that we would have to address on a macro level, right? So that's what I mean when I say that it's possible interpersonally, but not systemically. So I don't know how that's a position that any leftist disagrees with. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more that a conservative would disagree with me on than a leftist, but apparently I'm somehow a white supremacist because reasons, I guess.
That you can be racist against. It's a fake race. It's a fake race that gets to decide who the other races are that are not as good.
What is a fake race? And no, there's no such thing as a race that's not as good. I mean, sure, there are people that believe that is the case, but they're wrong.
This is deranged. You just said a whole lot of nothing.
Okay, so you're just a white supremacist. That's fine.
No, I just don't see how that supports your proposition. Now, obviously, I was typing this as she was talking, so I wasn't really able to steelman her positions like I'm doing now, right? But still, in terms of what her actual initial proposition was, I'm correct here. She said a whole lot of nothing to justify her actual proposition.
Vaush community thinks black pepper is spicy, yeah. It's not.
What does it mean that you're a leftist? It literally just means that I generally believe in a certain set of general ideas. Like leftism is sort of like a category or collection of ideas, right? So there are things that generally speaking leftists are going to be in favor of, but it's not always like it's going to depend on, like, for instance, if you're a leftist who like, for instance, my position of being in favor of workers owning the means of production, right? That is a leftist position. Being in favor of trans rights is a leftist position. And it's like, for a while, I was very reluctant to call myself a leftist. But because I have so many positions that are considered leftist positions, and so few positions that are considered conservative positions, I call myself a leftist, right?
Not that you're KKK, it's that you have, yeah, but there's more than that. And you're being too
She of all people should not be mocking anybody else's voice. Yeah, I would tend to agree.
generous. It's not that you're KKK, it's that you have unchecked biases which support the structure of white supremacy. That's what I would say to the average, like, racist lib, but this is different than that. This is like white identitarianism. You know,
the white identitarian. Is my position worse than a racist liberal, or is it better, or is it just different? I'm fucking confused. As for the person in her chat that's saying I have unchecked biases that support the structure of white supremacy, again, this doesn't support the actual proposition that PollyPeople had made originally. Because you have to keep in mind that there is a distinction to be made between systemic and interpersonal racism. The structure of white supremacy is a systemic issue that exists on a systemic level. And you know what? If you want to argue that maybe there are certain biases that I might be prone to having because I'm white or whatever, right? There are going to be certain things that I just haven't experienced in terms of racism. You would be correct in that assessment. Yes, people have unconscious biases that they are not aware of. This is something that exists. This is something that happens. And if you were to say that, it's like, yeah, okay, I wouldn't even disagree necessarily. Now, what those biases would entail, I'm not sure what they would entail for me. I try to not be biased. I try to view things through the lens of facts, logic, and reasoning, and to, not have, certain biases or predispositions that negatively affect people. But generally, I wouldn't entirely disagree that sure, there might be biases I have that aren't ideal. That could be the case.
But because they just try to equivalent, like make an equivalence, and this is why Vaushits are literal white supremacists, right? Is because they will.
I mean, why can't there be sockdom positions or liberal positions? Like, why do you think you're a leftist and not a sockdom/lib? Because of my positions on economic policy. That's literally it. My positions on economic policy, and it's also leftism is also a mode of it's almost like a mode of analysis too. like there's a certain mode of analysis that causes people to arrive to certain conclusions. Again, if I wasn't if I was opposed to socialism, let's say, I wouldn't be calling myself a leftist. But it's because I'm not only sympathetic to those ideas, but I'm in favor of them. I'm actively in favor of them. On top of the fact that every position I have is maybe not every position, but almost every position I have is very left of the Overton window, right? Some positions I have might be inside the Overton window. But you're going to notice that one of the reasons why you might find yourself hearing my arguments and maybe not immediately thinking, oh, that's far left, is because of the way I present them, right? Like, I want to present leftism in a logical manner that is palatable to, like, the average person, right? So, in that sense, maybe because I try to appeal to, like, more people, you could argue that that's like a more of like a more of like a liberal thing, because I guess liberals are but that's the thing is usually when I think liberalism, I think of complacency. I think of trying to maintain systems that exist for the sake of maintaining them, and it basically just being maintaining the status quo. Now, not all liberals are the same, right? There's going to be some liberals that don't want to maintain the status quo. There are going to be, say, for instance, soc Dems that don't want to maintain the status quo. But that's the thing, is I think that soc Dems are even though they have some different beliefs from me economically, I would still consider them allies. I would consider them people that are similar enough to the point where it's like, okay, I'd say that they're a force for good politically in the current landscape of politics, because they are also far left enough, despite not really being like full-on leftists. They're at a point relative to the Overton window and the center of that they generally push society in the direction that I want it to be pushed. So yeah, a literal white supremacist, it is like the word has no meaning, but if there is a real white supremacist, then it means, yeah, it's like, no, that's the thing, is you're just taking away meaning from words when you call everybody that disagrees with you whatever that word is. It's like, what's interesting is conservatives that have never watched me or my content have accused me of doing what PollyPeople does. Like, oh, you just call everyone that you disagree with a white supremacist. It's like, did I even utter the words white supremacist, or are you just hearing things? 'Cause usually it boils down to them just hearing stuff. Being a good person shouldn't be political. It is just being human. I agree, but that is a prescriptive claim about the way things ought to be. Sadly, being a good person in a lot of instances is a political statement, right? Being in favor of trans rights, being kind to trans people and believing that they deserve rights is a political position, even though it shouldn't be. My existence is political, even though it shouldn't be. I should be able to exist and it not be a political statement, but here we are.
They think you can show an argument is bad or whatever by just replacing the racial default with a racialized group, and somehow that you can analyze that in any way.
So, again, I would agree with her if she was talking about systemic racism, but again, her initial proposition had to do with interpersonal racism, right? Is it possible to be interpersonally racist to white people? Which the answer is yes. Now, is systemic racism something that negatively affects white people? The answer is no. See how much easier that is to defend as a position? I don't know who benefits from this weird dichotomous black and white way of thinking. Who benefits from this weird, unhinged, delusional mode of analysis that PollyPeople is using? This doesn't actually benefit anybody. You're I would assume want the same policies to be implemented, like as a leftist. But again, you have to keep in mind that the main difference is the mode of analysis. That's the main difference between me and PollyPeople here. Mode of analysis, like the way we analyze stuff. Mine is a lot more nuanced. And even though she most likely agrees with me in terms of actual political policy positions, she's so caught up in this weird niche. Is it physically possible to be interpersonally racist to white people versus the answer being either no or yes technically, but it's so unlikely that it's not even worth addressing at a macro level, and only would be something that could potentially apply interpersonally, and even that doesn't happen very often. Like, I feel like what's the fucking point? Like, I'm curious what status quo libs hold up despite its apparent obvious flaws. I guess I guess an example of this would be capitalism, right? Now, there are a lot of people that are not as into politics that are liberals, that would otherwise be leftists, that might have a similar way of thinking of things that I do. But they're liberals because they just don't care as much about politics. The status quo is capitalism, for instance, right? But there are a lot of liberals that I believe, once they hear certain socialist ideas, not under the label of socialism, but just hear the ideas, they might become a little bit more leftist, right? So a lot of it has to do with maintaining existing power structures. That doesn't mean that they're a force for bad. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily harmful, right? If they're left of the Overton window, of the center of the Overton window, that's still better than them not being political at all, right? That's not to say that they're harmful, right? It's just to say that they don't fully subscribe to the more, I guess, out there positions that would be less popular. Affordable healthcare, unions, etc. Yeah, and again, that's the thing, is I'm not opposed to liberalism. I just want to take it a step further, right? I'm willing to I'm genuinely somebody that is in favor of that, right? You have to keep in mind that liberalism is not the end all be all, right? It's just a general set of ideas. And there are some things that I'm going to agree with liberals on, right? But generally, I have a more a position on whatever the given issue may be that's like a little bit further left, if nothing else, right? It's more I guess the mode of analysis is more rigorous. Like, libs don't want to throw away our entire economic structure because capitalism has flaws. These flaws can be ironed out through policies. See, that would be the liberal position. The leftist position, at least my leftist position, because again, not all leftists are the same, but mine would be that you don't have to have a socialist revolution and start from scratch in order to obtain socialism, right? You want to look at what socialism actually is in terms of individual policies, and you want to one at a time implement these policies, right? You want policies that get you closer and closer to a socialist society to be implemented, right? That's the way that I look at it. For me, there's more of, I guess, I wouldn't say end goal, because I don't think that there's truly a such thing as like an end goal, or like pure socialism or pure capitalism or pure communism. I believe that no matter what, like, you're technically going to have a mixed economy, right? We technically have a mixed economy, but colloquially, we can refer to it as like a capitalist one, right? Even though it's technically mixed, right? Same line of logic would apply there. It's like, okay, There's like a general point that I would like society to get to, right? It's almost like there's more of a goal in mind. Now, how we get there, I mean, I might disagree with some other leftists. The analogy I like to use for arguing in favor of looking at individual policies rather than trying to, have like, say, a socialist revolution, which doesn't really serve any utility. Like if somebody has like a more out there position and they're like, yeah, let's have a socialist revolution, and that's like their genuine position, then I might argue, okay, so think of it as like a boat, right? Yeah, the boat you're on kind of sucks, okay? It's the capitalist boat. Now, you can destroy the capitalist boat and try to build a socialist boat while you're swimming and trying really hard to not drown, or you could just replace the pieces of the boat one at a time. So you can replace each piece of capitalism with a little piece of socialism. And over time, you end up with something that is not even the same boat that you started with. When does it become a different boat? I don't know what that threshold would be. Would it be after the first piece? Well, technically, it's a little bit different. Would it be after 50% of it is a socialist boat with socialist pieces rather than capitalist pieces? Or does it have to be 100%? I don't know. I don't think that there needs to be a cutoff, though. I think that generally, you're slowly improving that boat over time. So you don't have to throw away a system to change a system into something that it's currently not. That's sort of why my position is, like, I have a weird position here because I don't agree with liberals on everything or leftists on everything. Or, like, I don't agree with, like, I wouldn't say that I'm a sock dem, but but that's the thing is I can't say I'm not a socialist because it's like, well, I'm in favor of getting to this point, right? Which most liberals wouldn't be. Capitalism is way too effective for economic growth for us to reach a socialist economy. It's just not possible. Why is it not possible? Why is capitalism the only way? Why is capitalism bad or socialism good? So I guess capitalism in terms of like as a concept, just allows for say, for instance, workers to be exploited and not paid fair wages. It allows for corporations to have a disproportionate amount of power that they don't need to function properly, right? Again, there's a reason that I'm in favor of say, socialism, but not communism, right? Because I do think that there's a meaningful difference there. You can still have you can still have some level of competition in a socialist system, right? But again, you could literally have a market socialist system. That would still be socialism, right? So you could have a system where everything is mostly the same, except the key difference is instead of there being stockholders that own shares of the company, the workers own shares of the company, right? Because instead of there being, say, for instance, stockholders who, when it comes time to do what's like, what is the best interest of the stockholders? That's what companies sort of keep in mind a lot of the time. Well, if paying workers less means that same money can go to the stockholders, there is a vested interest in both the corporation and the stockholders against the workers, right? Whereas if the workers own the means of production, what you end up with is the workers have a vested interest in the success of the company and their working conditions and their wage. Like you sort of get something that's a lot more balanced, right? Because rather than all of the power disproportionately going towards the wealthy elite who have already established themselves and don't really have to do much from there, you have a more fair system that allows for people to have a say. So you don't even have, like, that as a concept would be a socialist position, right? Now, the way I explained it makes it sound not so bad, right? Because ultimately, socialism isn't so bad. It sounds scary. It's like, oh, socialism, scary word. But does socialism give the worker better rights? Yes, absolutely. Because go ask any economist or listen to an economist debate socialism might work for smaller countries like Scandinavian countries, but a country as big as America, you simply can't spread the profits that thin. So why does it work at a micro level, but not at a macro level? Because ultimately, you have the same thing, but the numbers are bigger, right? So instead of 10,000, you have 100,000. Instead of 100,000, you have 1,000,000. Instead of 1,000,000, you have 10. You get the point. It's just the same thing, but scaled up. I don't know why that can't happen. I don't know. Like now, in terms of what what would work under the current system that we currently have. Well, okay, if that's your mindset, then okay. But the whole point is to somewhat slowly but effectively change the system over time. I mean, ultimately, we're going to end up at a point where AI is. I mean, we're already at a point where this is already slowly happening over time, right? Why pay workers to do something when you can have AI do it? See, that's the thing, is when you have AI that is capable of doing everything that the workers can, once we get to that point, who should be reaping the rewards of AI doing everything? The wealthy elite or the everyday person? I think that the answer is the everyday person, because at that point, nobody's doing work. It's just an automated system doing the work for somebody. And that somebody should be, well, society at large, not just the wealthy elite whose parents' parents worked hard, maybe potentially after getting kind of lucky in terms of their parents, and then they bought out all of the automated systems, so then they have control over it, so they reap all the rewards. You have to keep in mind that while it is true that early stage capitalism it sort of allowed the economy to thrive, we don't live in the same world anymore. We don't live in a world where this is permanently a feasible system. Now, is it currently feasible? Well, yes, it's clear. I mean, we haven't collapsed in on ourselves. So, we're not all dead. So yes, it's a feasible system right now. But how long until it becomes infeasible? How long until technology has improved so much and the world is so different that we need something that's, well, different? I'm in favor of socialist policies that are meant to work in a capitalist framework. It seems to make everyone happy. And see, I'm not even opposed to that necessarily, because it gets us closer to, well, the ultimate position that I would be in favor of. See, that's the thing, is socialist policies being implemented within a capitalist framework get us closer to socialism. It doesn't get us there, not even close. But you have to realize that the whole point is to replace all of the pieces of the capitalist boat with the socialist boat. And the reason why I think that you are politically in favor of good ideas, despite maybe having a slightly different ultimate end goal / position, is because you would be one of the people helping replace the capitalist parts with socialism ones. But again, capitalism and socialism are, in essence, arbitrarily defined theoretical ideas. You have to keep in mind that there is no pure socialism or pure capitalism. So whatever the endpoint may be, however we decide to categorize it, we should be in favor of whatever causes the most good. And I think that you would be, right? Anyways, we've gotten so sidetracked. Let's continue.
That is white identitarianism at its most pure. It's like It's kind of Nazi, right? It's kind of like you might not know that you're a Nazi, but you are.
I love how after that I did that whole spiel and we're getting back on topic. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Me, the person that just spent the last fucking hour talking about how we could potentially achieve socialism. It's like, yeah, okay.
Are. You're repellent and sweaty. It's gross and embarrassing, right? Like, look, if you just want to be racist, I don't know what to tell you, right? My guess is
apparently being in favor of improving the systems in place until they to the point where they become completely different systems, and being in favor of eliminate like finding I guess eliminating systemic racism is kind of like a long-term goal, but in favor of policy positions that reduce systemic racism and the effects of it. I guess that I'm somehow a Nazi white supremacist, despite literally advocating for positions that do the complete fucking opposite.
Says you're pretty committed to that, but you're also a sweaty weirdo.
Being white shouldn't be seen as a default. I agree with that.
It shouldn't exist, you dumbass.
See, the reason her argument is so effective here is because she did a silly voice. Sorry,
White,
what did she say again?
But you're all... I don't know what to tell you, right? My guess is you're pretty committed to that, but you're all...
Committed to what?
Also a sweaty weirdo.
Oh, right. The argument is you're a sweaty weirdo, right? Oh, my entire position here destroyed.
Being white shouldn't be seen as a default. I agree with that.
It shouldn't exist, you dumbass.
In terms of there being even social categories to distinguish between races, if that's like I assume that that's sort of what she's trying to get at. Again, I'm trying to steelman her position here. If that's the case, then yeah, I agree that we shouldn't have we shouldn't have race be something that influences social class. I would agree with that. So But she thinks that I don't, or she just doesn't care.
Whiteness shouldn't exist. The only reason why it exists is to facilitate white supremacy, and therefore anybody that identifies with it and thinks that it can never be attacked in a way that's not good and based is a...
So do you think that killing a random white person on the basis of them being white would be good and based? Again, this is an example of that would be an example of interpersonal racism, right? Against a white person. Again, not very common. How often do white people get hate crimed on the basis of their whiteness? Not very often, right? You don't really see that happening anywhere. But that doesn't mean that it's physically impossible, right?
White supremacist. People should be insulting the concept of being white all the livelong day and shame anyone like I do who thinks that it's an identity worth protecting and not something laughable. And
so worth protecting, what do you mean by worth protecting? Because I would agree that white people don't need to be protected, right? They're not at a disadvantage that they need to be protected from.
Something that should be derided every single moment possible.
You do realize a socialist society would be the solution.
Let's go!
Yes, a socialist society would be the ultimate goal. And she doesn't even... I don't think she reads the rest of my message, so I'll read it out. Since class distinction was what was used to oppress minorities. So, how is Vaush racist? Again, good question from yours truly. In a society in which class distinction isn't used to oppress people, yeah, one of the primary mechanisms that has consistently been used, historically and today, against racial minorities is class discrimination. That's what they use. That is the literal mechanism. They use economic policies as the main mechanism to oppress minorities. That's like, I don't see how you could... okay, but apparently that I'm somehow a white supremacist.
National socialism. Yeah, okay. So you're just putting the socialism into national socialism. It's not going to be the solution if you don't even understand.
National socialism isn't socialism.
If it's done by a bunch of Vaushites, right? It'll just be national socialism. This is why.
No, it would be libertarian socialism, because if we're talking about Vaush, he believes in libertarian socialism. I also believe in libertarian socialism. Fix your posture. Sorry. You're right. Sorry, I've had good posture for a while, and I'm lately I've just had terrible posture. It's because when I have to like read something on screen, my vision isn't the best. So I think to get rid of whiteness as a concept, but only as a hierarchy and discrimination, the good and bad kind of racism. Oh, the good and bad of racism. I was gonna say, what's the good kind of racism? Okay. Hierarchy and discrimination. I don't think Polly said she wanted to kill white people. Yeah, no. Like, I'm gonna be charitable here and assume, like, I don't think that that's what she meant, right? Like, I could strawman her and be like, oh, so you just want to kill all white people. I don't think that's what she means, right? I think she's just saying that she wants to remove the power structure associated with whiteness. But she sees whiteness as like the power structure. She labels it as such, right? But I don't think she's talking about like removing like white people or people that have white skin or whatever. I got contacts recently. Have you tried them? I did a really long time ago. They just fucking hurt my eyes. And my glasses are broken. One of the, like, the frame is broken. One of the thing, and I just haven't gotten them fixed because, fuck, I'm lazy.
I say you're a Nazi.
I didn't say white people need to be protected.
Yeah, you're saying that it's somehow wrong to insult white people on the basis of...
Wait. I guess it would depend on the context, but I said that it is possible to be racist against a white person on the basis of them being white, which is true. So if you kill somebody because they're white, that's a bad thing. And that would be racist. Because murder is bad, believe it or not. And if anti-white racism, which again, not a real world issue for the most part, if I'm going to be totally honest here, like, it's not something that needs to be addressed, especially not at like a systemic level. But if anti-white racism is the main motivation for, say, I don't know, a white person getting murdered, then yeah, that would be bad, and that would be an example of that, right? Again, it just doesn't happen very often.
They're being white, and it's instead of being absolutely based, right? because people like you defend and further white supremacy interpersonally, while at the same time asserting...
How do I defend it interpersonally? By being against it interpersonally for everybody? Like, I don't think that people should be racist interpersonally, period. I don't think you should be interpersonally racist to anybody. But apparently that's me being in favor of interpersonal racism somehow. Okay.
That you can be interpersonally racist against white people. That is...
You can. It's just not very common.
Ironically, or I guess racistly, doing interpersonal white supremacy, right?
No, it's not. That, like, that white like, I guess if I were to be a, like, if I was to be a white supremacist, I would say that fuck, what would a white supremacist say? That you can't be, I guess, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna use the same kind of framing that she uses. You can't, a white supremacist would argue that you can't be racist to black people because that's just the default state of a white society, is racism. So it's actually not racism. I don't, what would a, like, I can't make like a good white supremacist argument, to be honest. I'm trying, what would a white supremacist say? 1350? Did you know that 13% of the population commits 50% of the crimes? Maybe if I was saying shit like that, I could understand where you would come to that conclusion. But yeah, I don't know. This is just so bad faith.
And that's why Vaushites and people like you are putting the socialism in National Socialism.
No, I for the 5 trillionth time, I said I'm in favor of libertarian socialism. I'm against National Socialism, which isn't even socialism.
Vaush will not save us. Saviors don't work. Organizing works. Building solidarity and community pride works. Racism cucks your ability to defend yourself because you buy into Vaush's bullshit, right? Yeah, I mean, look, you're just a racist and you're a white supremacist and...
Again, like, you're just coming to this conclusion without any actual evidence. You're just saying words. You're just saying words.
You are doing the white leftist thing and saying, I don't have to give it...
A white supremacist would probably say if race isn't real, then I can't be a racist or some stupid shit. Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, like if I were to be a white supremacist, I would have to be so bad faith and say, like, I'd have to be extremely bad faith and say something like, well, you just said that white people only exist as like a power structure. So if they don't exist, then you can't you can't be racist. Like, racism isn't real because like John P. Racism invented it. Why is a Hasan Clip Channel her moderator? Because she's a Hasan simp. Speaking of Hasan simp, I need to go to the bathroom, so you better believe that I am going to be pulling a Hasan on this Hasan simp. That is right. Be right back. Gonna go pee. Sorry for doing a Hasan moment, but not really, since you love Hasan so much.
Give a shit about racism because I'm for socialism, and that allows me to be racist all the livelong day, as if somehow there's no such thing as Strasserism, which is essentially what you're advocating for. Because that's what'll happen if you don't dismantle white supremacy. You can adopt socialism, but it'll be socialism only for the Aryan race, like you know, people that look like you and me. But I'm not like you. I don't identify on the basis of my whiteness. I don't think it needs defending. I think it needs to be ridiculed and made cringy to even worry about.
I said it's possible to be racist to white people,
But that's enough. That's enough. And you're showing right there how you're proving me right in real time. All I need you to say it's possible, because then that tells me you don't understand anything and you're willing to defend the white identity in some interpersonal aspects.
I did not say that white people need to be protected from racism because it doesn't happen frequently enough.
But that's not right. That's not right. You're still being a white identitarian when you say this. You understand that? Just by saying it's possible, you're being a white identitarian. It's not possible. It's only possible if you think of white people as a people that has any meaning other than to be shitty to non-white people. And there's nothing else. There's no other reason for the existence of whiteness other than to oppress. Even your big special boy Vaush agrees with that. He just doesn't want to be bothered with the argument because he knows other white people don't want to hear it. But that makes him a white supremacist. Because if you're not anti-racist, you're racist. And you're worse than that.
It would be socialism for everyone.
Unleavened Bread Square says what? Yeah.
You're simply incapable of having a nuanced debate.
No. You're simply incapable of not being a white supremacist. And a ridiculous Vaushite. And a ridiculous, this is the reason why Vaush doesn't want to debate me, by the way.
By the way, I'm very glad that, I'm very, very glad that we're not doing a stream where it's like taking a shot every time she falsely accuses someone of being a white supremacist, because oh my god, if I were to do that, I would be drunk head over heels, my god. But yeah, no, oh my god, where do we even start? So right off the bat, I like the idea that how am I defending whiteness? That doesn't make any fucking sense, first of all. Like, no, at no point did I ever say that white people need to be protected. We don't need to be a protected class. I would actually agree that we don't need that. Again, all I am saying is that interpersonally it is possible, but unlikely, for somebody to be racist against a white person. It is possible. Just extremely unlikely. And is, again, even interpersonal racism is disproportionately going to negatively affect black people a lot more than white people, right? Like, I think that we would all agree on that. But to claim that it is impossible for it to go the other way is where I sort of have an issue. Now, she says something very interesting that I just want to point out. All right, let's listen to this.
And a ridiculous Vaushite, and a ridiculous this is the reason why Vaush doesn't want to debate me, by the way.
This is the reason Vaush doesn't want to debate me, implying that Vaush is scared of a debate. Well, what's interesting is that it seems to be the case that I have a very similar position to Vaush on this issue. So, if you want to have a debate about this issue, I'm more than willing to do so. PollyPeople, I know you're watching this. I know you're seeing this right now. I don't know if you're watching it on stream or in your own time, but I guarantee you that yeah, you're not going to debate me, are you? I'm open to doing it. I'd love to debate you, but I guess the issue is that I don't have nearly as much clout as Vaush does. So obviously she's not going to be interested because I don't have hundreds of thousands of subscribers and thousands of concurrent viewers every stream. Does she think that because it's possible for somebody to get a late-term abortion for fun, that would mean that only happens? This would mean this not only happens often, but is a serious issue, Lamau? Yeah, exactly. It's like, it would be like arguing that you're anti-choice and that you think women are property because you think it is physically possible for somebody to get a late abortion for fun. Yeah, it is physically possible. It just doesn't fucking happen very often. So why would we base a policy position off of it? Like, now, frankly, I mean, I could get into the whole argument about, okay, well, we're not even dealing with like a sentient life being ended. Like, it's not a sentient life that's being ended. It doesn't experience consciousness. But yeah, I mean, we're not going to get into that.
Is he knows I would say this to him, and he doesn't have an argument for it, and he also knows my talking points on it are too good, which is why he says things like,
Oh, I think
Okay, if your talking points are so good, then perhaps you would love to debate me. I mean, if your talking points are so good, then I'm sure you're going to destroy me in the debate, you know, just easily. No, I think what would happen is she would get fucking humiliated, but because she's delusional, she would think that she's winning when she gets shit on, and then she would go on for like the next year talking about how she won a debate against Femyoz, because she's a fucking deranged person. She thinks she won a debate against Keffals, and don't get me wrong, Keffals isn't even particularly good at debate. Like, she's kind of dog shit, if I want to be totally honest, in terms of like rhetorical skills. But I mean, losing to Keffals, I mean, you either have to have a really shitty take or be shit at debate. And I think PollyPeople is probably both.
He's a little, whatever, fragile.
yeah, okay. Said nobody ever, except Vaush. God save me from white people with nuance. Yeah, please. Please.
Oh, yes, I exist to oppress.
Well, I mean, you could stop. Peripheral poly, that's right.
If all you can do is throw labels around without using any actual logic or reasoning, that's not an argument.
I don't know what to
It's like, do you think that, like, using a funny voice is like an own or something? Because what I'm saying here is correct. If you can't use any actual logic or reasoning and you just use labels to discredit somebody without explaining in a logical and nuanced fashion why those labels are accurate, then yeah, you're not making an argument. You're just saying words.
tell you, I just told you the whole argument. I told you the entire thing. I gave the game away for you. I like walked you down the path of how to recognize.
The reason why PollyPeople doesn't get debated is because Polly is a disagreeable person. It is not the points Polly makes, it's the way Polly does it. No, I disagree. I think that people are willing to debate Polly, but that she just doesn't accept debate requests. She does this weird thing where she'll be like, oh, Vaush is so scared of debating me. But then somebody like me, who actually wants to debate her on literally the same fucking subject, comes around and is like, yo, I'd be willing to debate you. And she's like, nah, fuck that. Even though, like, it's like, whatever. She doesn't want to debate somebody that has, like, a somewhat similar sized viewer base, I guess. Like, it's like I have a larger audience than her. Not by much. I will say that she does get, like, a decent number of concurrents for her sub count, I guess. But, whatever.
Recognize that you're a white supremacist, KKK, Femyoz, whatever that is, and how you could do better. You know, it's pretty straightforward, but you're too committed to being a racist and a white supremacist to listen.
Again, these words mean nothing when you say them in this context, in this way. You just throw around words, but every time you do that, it just means less and less coming from you. And if I didn't know any better, it would just mean less and less in general. Like, there are a lot of people that have the position that those words mean nothing. I disagree with that. I think that they do mean something, but that people misuse words. And I guess over time, the meaning will diminish if enough people misuse them. I mean, words do change meaning over time, but she mentions Vaush more than actual racist people. Yeah, notice how, like, she won't, like, bring up Nick Fuentes or someone that's like an actual Nazi or white supremacist, because she knows damn well that I would disagree with basically every single one of their positions, except maybe gun rights. Maybe I would agree with them on that. I don't fucking know, but like using oh, you support Vaush as an insult is really weird. Like, that only works if I don't like Vaush, but I do. I have a positive opinion of him. It's like, yes, I agree with Vaush. It's a good fucking astute observation. That's not a bad thing. Like I think she wants me to go, no, I swear I'm not like Vaush. I'm different. I swear I'm one of the good lefties. That's probably what she's looking for. Careful, she's gonna say you're searching for clout, so I will not debate. Yeah, which is fucking stupid because I'm more known than she is. Like, more people know who I am than PollyPeople. Like, I guess she might be able to make the argument that maybe more people in, like, the Twitch politics sphere know who she is. Because I guess she's on Twitch and I'm not. But okay, I mean, cool. I'd say like generally I'm more known than her. Not necessarily by that much. But like I don't see the issue. Like I feel like it's a pretty fair debate. Like there's not much like what? Oh, I'm going to win over the schizos in our audience. I mean, maybe some of them are reasonable and just watch her casually. But yeah, I don't know. Vaush derangement syndrome, case study number 100,000, literally. It is evident that Polly is being rude and lying throughout the video you are reviewing. Oh, absolutely, but I still want to debate her. In fact, that's one of the reasons I want to debate her, is because she's, a dishonest piece of shit, right? All she does is twirl her hair and smugly grin as she struggles to stutter incoherent direct out of her gross mouth. Yeah. No, I agree. PollyPeople knows that not many people are Nazi/white supremacists, so they broaden their vocabulary of these words. Yeah, literally, until it means literally fucking nothing. It's like, oh yeah, if you disagree with me, it's because you're a white supremacist. Thoughts on Stinky and Shrek? Oh, you mean Jalen's ex? Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that for ages. I could spend hours talking about that whole situation, but I'm not gonna do that for this stream. She's a Hasan waiting room. Like, that's the only reason people know her, cause she cock rides Hasan all day while you actually do your own shit away from Vaush. Yeah, could you imagine if I memorized Vaush's streaming schedule and I just like started streaming like 3 hours before that and streamed for exactly 3 hours right before Vaush's stream so that I could be the Vaush waiting room? That would be fucking psychotic. Like, okay, you know what? Maybe that would unironically be a good business strat. People compare me to Vaush a lot, so you know what? Maybe I can take advantage of that. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst idea ever. It's just, I don't know. I don't base my whole personality off of one political streamer. I don't know. To me, that just seems weird.
Listen to what I'm saying. You never ever can be racist against a group of a group of people that have organized themselves on the basis of their skin color to oppress.
So again, she's still stuck in the mindset of thinking of it in terms of like a systemic issue, right? But if we're talking about racism, and which is a term that encompasses both systemic and interpersonal racism, and I say that interpersonally it is physically possible to be racist against a white person, I think that this is just a mischaracterization of what my actual position here is. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of what I actually believe and advocate for.
The only thing you can do is be anti-racist against that group. So there's no such thing as interpersonal racism against white people. There's only interpersonal anti-racism.
Again, what would interpersonal anti-racism look like? So, for instance, like would you consider killing a white person on the basis of them being white anti-racism? Because if so, it's like, well, damn, I thought anti-racism was like about fighting against actual racism. I didn't think it was just anti-white in terms of like just wanting to harm white people. I didn't know that, but she's doing a really bad job at not making it seem like that. And it's like, oh wow, I wonder why people think that the left is fucking insane. Oh, I don't know, maybe because of people like fucking this. Holy shit.
See, this is what we need. This is what we need. It's a little shot in the arm for the PollyPeople broadcast, right?
All you said is that believing it's physically possible.
It's not physically possible. It's all in the mind. It's all in white supremacist mind.
So if somebody kills a white person on the basis of them being white, that's like is that like in the white supremacist's mind that was a bad thing and that it was actually based and red-pilled that happened? Again, like, there's like a clear distinction to be made between something being a genuine issue on a broader level versus something that could exist on a micro level, at least in theory. Again, it just doesn't happen very often. That's the main argument that you would make is yeah, well, it could happen, but it doesn't happen often enough to warrant a real issue. And this is sort of how I sort of find myself creating almost like a symmetry breaker if I were to talk to someone that doesn't think that racism against black people is a real issue, right? Because something that they might do, similar to what I said in terms of like replacing the variables or whatever. See, but they would do it in a different context. They would replace the variables black with white and vice versa, right? But they would do it in a context that's disanalogous, right? Interpersonal. So the best thing you can do there is acknowledge that yes, there are going to be some instances in which, yeah, this would be analogous. But if you look at the broader picture, if you look at how this functions at a systemic level, it is disanalogous because of the way these different categories of people have been affected by this, by different power structures.
He says, believing that it's possible to be physically possible to be racist against a white person somehow makes me an evil white supremacist. Well, it's true. That is deranged. I didn't oppress anyone. Yes, you do. If you...
Who did I oppress? Name at least 5 people.
You,
Or at least one person. I don't know why I said 5. Yeah, it's just like, no, there was like 4 people I oppressed. So I was like, name 5.
Suggesting that white...
I gave it's just me, but your stream is laggy. Is it actually? Me when I create an in-group to gain advantages over the out-group that didn't perceive me at all until I created that in-group to create advantage. Wait, what? I'm so confused. What is happening? Mom, I'm doing social theory. Yeah, literally. Just acknowledging that whites can be discriminated as, quote, white supremacy is downright delusional. Yeah, exactly. Like how, what does that have to do with white people reigning supreme? I don't get that. Unless the term white supremacy literally just means that you don't want to kill all white people or or some shit like that, in which case, okay, well then that's like a completely different opinion. The stream is fine now? Okay.
People are a group that can somehow be insulted on the basis of their being white in any respect.
Well, it wouldn't... I mean, I don't know if insulted would be the route I would go. Like, I was thinking more along the lines of, okay, if somebody kills somebody on the basis of their skin color and the person being killed is a white person, right? And so they were killed on the basis of them being white. It's like, okay, well, there's clearly an objective and measurable harm there, right? Like, you can argue all day of, oh, well, if somebody gets insulted for being white, oh, well, it's your fault you got your feeling. Like, I'm not interested in arguing over like having the argument of well, this is politeness versus, or sorry, impoliteness versus actual racism. I'm not interested in that. So I'm giving a clear-cut example of something where it would be like, yes, this would be a clear and unambiguous example. But obviously she's not going to engage with that.
Ignores the fact that white people exist only to do bad things, right? You can be like I'm white, but my ethnicity is half Mexican, half Jewish, right? So you can be anti-Semitic. You can be racist against Mexican people, you know, on the basis of being Mexican or whatever.
Yes, you can. I hate to break it to Polly, but one of Hitler's favorite drinks was coffee, so I'd hate if she drank coffee because that means she upholds white supremacy. That is true. Yeah, hopefully she's a tea drinker instead. The pop theory that white people invented race to dominate black people is question begging and explanatorily dog shit. Yeah, and again, this is sort of why I created a Steelman version of the argument, because I do believe that the idea behind it, at least the Steelman version, is that in whatever, in certain Western societies, it was white people that were in power that sort of used race as a, like they constructed race as a social category, as a means of having categories of people that are lesser than them in terms of how society treats them. In which case I agree with that, right? But again, that is a much more effective way of framing the same idea. And when you frame it like that, it's like, well, yeah, I agree with that, right? But the way Polly frames it is just not useful. It's not going to convince people that don't already agree with her. But again, I mean, her goal isn't really to, persuade people as much as it is to be Hasan's waiting room, right? Like, if your main goal is to be Hasan's waiting room, I mean, I guess you're doing a great job, Polly. You're killing it. You're doing awesome.
But you can't be. You could call me a cracker. You call me a KK cracker all you want.
It was the Europeans and Chinese who made those ideas of superior races. Yeah, and we could get into like the idea of like, okay, well, yeah, but what about China, right? But like, I guess the counter argument there would be like, well, that's just whataboutism. It's like, yeah, but those aren't mutually exclusive, right? If we're talking specifically about Western society, we're going to be talking about Europeans, which is like, white people that made those ideas, that constructed the social category of race in order to then categorize some races as superior to others, right? To keep power and further prosper their group. Yeah. The class-based account of race, the class-based account of race, the a la Field Sisters is a better explanation. So I agree that would be like a better explanation in terms of say for instance, I guess it would be like more specific to I guess more recent examples of systemic racism, right? Whereas if we're talking like way back, like, okay, well, what is the origin story of racism? I guess that what I just described could be an analysis of that. Race was constructed as proxy for class. Is this the correct way to view it? Oh, is the correct way to view it? Yes. That is the correct way to view it. But I don't think she would disagree with that. I think she would agree that yes, it was constructed as a proxy for class. But that white people that were in power specifically wanted it to be that way, right? So the concept of white people being superior, let's say, was yes created as a proxy for class, right? So I don't think that's not opposed to the idea behind the Steelman version of what she's saying. All nations like near World War I times. Oh, most nations near World War I times thought of themselves as superior. Yeah. But again, if we're talking about like America or like American politics or like Western issues, then I can sort of understand why it would be specifically. But again, it's like, okay, that like I guess because she's incapable of looking at things from a micro level, I guess she would have to acknowledge that, right? She would have to be like, okay, well, I guess the bigger picture is that like this isn't exclusive to white people. It's like, what about Chinese supremacy, huh? It's like, okay. But no, let's just like I mean, she's a Hasan simp, so she probably supports China and doesn't care that they're genociding the Uyghur Muslims.
That's not offensive or wrong.
You know what? Since she's going to, you know, I guess argue against me and Vaush interchangeably. I guess I'll argue against her and Hasan interchangeably, since she's literally Hasan's waiting room.
Right? Because even though I don't identify with being white, I still benefit from white supremacy, and every white person does. And if you suggest that there are any white people that should be able to defend their whiteness from attack,
it's not about defending your whiteness, right? Like defend whiteness, like as in, like, okay, I guess again an example that I keep bringing up like 5 trillion times because I think it's a good example of, yeah, here's like an example of how it could possibly be the case that somebody is interpersonally racist. If somebody like beats you up or shoves you into a locker or fucking kills you based on you being white because they hate white people, that would be racist. I don't, and in that case, it's like, if you were doing things interpersonally to assert that level of racism, and in that case, yeah, it would be an issue. Again, it's just not like an issue that happens at a broader level, right? So again, I think that you shoot yourself in the foot when you don't acknowledge this as a leftist. National superiority is not quite the same as racial or even ethnic superiority, though. Oh, no, I agree. I mean, they do go hand in hand, right? Whether white supremacy then perpetuated itself, irrespective of shifting class relations, is still up for debate. This is just an explanation of its origins that avoids the circular reasoning. I mean, fair enough, I guess. I mean, I'm not in disagreement with either explanation, right? And to be fair, like the like PollyPeople's explanation that I went with, or I guess, like the idea behind what she said, I really like. The only reason it's even plausible is because I fucking steelmanned her position. Every white person benefits from white supremacy. I'm going to assume that she doesn't mean literally every white person because, like, let's say, for instance, a baby is born and they're white and then they die in 2 seconds. Like, okay, they probably wouldn't benefit from white supremacy, right? I think she would agree with that, right? I don't think she means literally every white person. I hope. I really fucking hope.
That's doing white supremacy, and whites.
I think that almost every white person would be a beneficiary, at least in this country, right? There would be some instances where it's like, okay, here's an exception to the rule. But, yeah.
Solidarity, and that is dog shit.
Systemic racism only applies to black people. Interpersonal racism.
That's not even true. Systemic racism applies to racialized people.
Wait, systemic racism, yes, applies to racialized people, as in racial minorities. But that again, that's systemic racism. You still haven't addressed how you can't be interpersonally racist to any race of people. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Only 2 races, bro. Get out of here.
Well, not to plug up, but you know what I mean? Well, I know what you mean. But that's more of a self-report than anything else.
I don't see how it's a self-report to have a logical and coherent position.
Interpersonal racism, prejudice without systemic oppression isn't racism.
So I guess it depends on how you define. So if racism is strictly a systemic issue and not an interpersonal one, then I can get behind that. So I guess if you deny the existence of interpersonal racism, like if I were to presuppose that interpersonal racism doesn't exist and that all racism is systemic, I guess, but I don't presuppose that. I don't know why anyone would. White supremacy ain't working well for me, not gonna lie. Yeah, for real. Where are my benefits? Where are my white people benefits? What the hell? Oh right, I'm trans. I'm a troon. I guess I don't get as many benefits. Hey Femyoz. Hello Alexander. Welcome to the stream. But yeah, anyways, let's continue. I don't know how much more there is.
Well, it's based if it's directed against white people. To be white is to...
Again, anti-racism doesn't have to be framed as something against white people. It's not against anything necessarily other than racism, right? Anti-racism is against racism, not against white people, but against racism. That's what anti-racism is about.
To have the privilege of not being racialized, right? Yeah.
How much does she need to groom her fucking hair? Jesus Christ, she is so upset. Yeah, it's like, okay, it's got to be getting a little bit greasy if you're like she's not just like twirling it like with her finger or whatever. Like, yeah, just like, you know, just like occasionally I'll do this. Like, oh, time to adjust my hair. Like she's like trying to. It's like she's like wringing it out like a fucking towel. She's like, holy shit. That's why it's so greasy, lol. Yeah, exactly. Like, what the fuck?
But you're gross and insufferable.
I agree that I inadvertently benefit from white supremacy, which is a bad thing. However, I don't think it would be okay to unironically advocate to me genocided on the basis of my skin color.
Who's doing that?
So, I didn't say that anybody is doing that. I just said that at the end of the day, regardless of whether or not it's a real world issue, it is theoretically possible, right? That's all I was saying, is that it is anyways, holy shit.
Who is doing that?
Again, it's not a matter of whether or not it's common. It's just physically possible. And you said it is physically impossible. Again, this is a Mott and Bailey argument, because I agree that it is not a common thing for say, people that advocate for a genocide against people on the basis of their skin color against white people, right? Or anybody for that matter. But it's still bad to do, even if it's not something that ultimately causes policy positions to be implemented, right? Like, it's still bad.
Look, white people only exist because white people want white people to exist. White people should do the right thing and end white people, right? And they will learn very quickly that you can end white people without genocide. But racists can't understand.
So as a concept, or like, because when I say genocide, I don't mean like ending like that racism. I mean like as in like rounding up what, like if somebody was in favor of rounding up all white people and killing them in death camps. Like that would be that was what I was referring to. Again, deliberately not understanding my argument.
A world that white people don't exist and run the show. So they think the only end to whiteness is genocide, right? You're just self-reporting, right?
No, I don't think that a white genocide is actually something that's feasible or going to happen or something that we need to worry about, right? Like, I don't think that that's actually something that will happen in reality.
What about dismantling white supremacy? That would genocide. It will end the white race, right? But it'll end it in a just way. Dumbass.
So, what do you think I meant by genocide? Like, I didn't mean ending power structures that benefit white people. That wasn't what I said. Like, that's not a genocide.
Get out of here. There's something whiteness is skin color, right? And you're just self-reporting how much you love your skin color and how much you want to defend your skin color.
Not really.
Citing the Turner Diaries, right? Yeah. If someone does that, I think I already answered that.
I'm not saying this is a real issue.
Look, you're missing my point here. You're missing my point. You're still defending the white race instead of saying, look, there's plenty of ways to end the white race that don't have anything to do with genocide.
And what does she mean by end the white race? If she means ending like power structures that disproportionately benefit white people and cause harm to other people, then yeah, I would agree with that. That's not ending the white race. Like, that's not how ending a race works. Like, what? But
white people like you are uninterested in it.
I've never said white people are being genocided. I simply proposed a hypothetical.
But the hypothetical doesn't make any sense. It shows...
Well, it does make sense. It's a hypothetical. The whole point is that, yeah, it's not a real issue, but if it were to happen, you would agree, right? But she won't engage in hypotheticals because either she doesn't have the capacity to, or she's too bad faith.
That you are a racist. It shows that you're an Afroforum enjoyer. Maybe we could all just put this shit down and have a better world. I know, right? Come on. How about you just stop being a white supremacist? That would literally genocide whiteness without killing anybody. It wouldn't even...
What is that? What? Like, this is incoherent. Genocide whiteness without killing anybody. What does that mean? again, I feel like I've already like tried steel manning her arguments, but it's like getting to a point where it's like, I mean, I can't keep doing her job for her if she keeps saying deranged shit.
Even qualify under the term genocide, but I know white people endlessly want to fearmonger about the somehow hypothetical killing of fair-skinned European Andes or whatever. If you stop watching Vaush for like 10 minutes, you would realize how deeply insane it is to think about white genocide. Yeah, nobody thinks. Yeah, like think about that.
Was I thinking about actual white genocide, or was I proposing a hypothetical? Rather than stating that the white genocide is something that's actually going to happen and that's grounded in reality and that needs to be taken seriously.
This is why I call people, this is why I call Vaushites Nazis and shit, right? The only people that talk about that are Vaushites and like Nick Fuentes.
Do you know what a hypothetical is?
So do better. Like you're proving my point in real time.
No, it's the opposite. You're proving my point, which is that you're fucking insane and deranged. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I'm gonna end stream in like however many minutes. How much longer does this go before she bans me from her chat or times me out or whatever? So we're at like, I mean, we could keep going, but it's just the same mentally insane, deranged shit. So, I think what I'm going to do is, because there's, you know what? I have an idea. There's also, so before I end stream, I'd like to mention that this is only part 1 to the PollyPeople saga, or part 2 if you count the stream I did like a year ago or whatever the fuck. That being said, there's going to be part 2 where I watch the rest of this shit to the point where she times me out, and then there's going to be something very special. And that, my friends, will be the debate between PollyPeople and Rose Mulet, my 2 favorite lol cows. I didn't realize how insane she was. Yeah. She's fucking crazy. So anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to let me know by smashing like. If you want to see more content like this, smash like to let me know. Comment, subscribe with notifications on so that you get notified every time I upload something. So, yeah. Regardless, I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.